Doyle into this episode. I talk about Republic of Doyle and trying to do a crossover. Justin was not having it. I'm only kidding. Justin was all for it. Maybe we can see that in the future. If you're out there listening, make it happen. Justin also talks about working with a dog on the show and obviously like some of the limitations the dogs has and sometimes how the weather here in Newfoundland can play a factor to that. So that was kind of very insightful. And of course, to close it off, I somehow find a way to butt in, like I always do, with my own ideas. I pitched some ideas of like, some other guest stars they could have on, possibly this fellow right here, and, how they can be implemented into those episodes. Some of them are great. Some of them are like, But anyway, we'll see how Justin reacts to that. Also, you may notice that I'm wearing a Toronto Maple Leafs jersey in this episode. Now, Rogers has told me that I am not affiliated with the Toronto Maple Leafs or the ECHL team, the Newfoundland Growlers. That is an affiliation of the Maple Leafs, the Growlers games that you can check out here on Rogers TV. Listen, they didn't need to tell me that. If you look at me out in public, I look at myself in the mirror, I know I am no hockey player. I am a podcaster at best, if you want to even call me that. I actually did try out for the Growlers and actually gather around. I will tell you the story. I tried out for the Growlers and it went horribly. I don't even think I got through one shift. I'm only joking. I would never try out for the Growlers because they'd take one look at me and be like, buddy, water bottles are over there. And I'd be like, on it. Anyways, before I get really depressed and go down that road, let's get you to something happier, shall we? Check out this episode. You can catch the full-length version of this episode on TobinTonight.com. But thanks to Rogers for giving you at least this portion of the interview. And I'm going to stop rambling on and hit the music. Justin,
how you doing, man?
To Tobin tonight, man.
Thank you.
I know that you're dealing with Newfoundland, a lot of the East Coast, filming Hudson and Rex.
Yeah.
I wanted to make you feel a little bit at home, so I wore a Toronto Maple Leafs jersey.
Hey, that is much appreciated. Thank you.
Unless you go for like Montreal. Then
yeah. Are you? Well, then we can't be talking. We can't
exactly.
Have this conversation.
Thank you for coming, Justin. It was a great interview. No. Justin, the one thing I want to tease you with a little bit, because it is Newfoundland, that's what we do. Yeah. I grew up watching a lot of Radio Free Roscoe, per se. That's how I kind of got into broadcasting.
Nice.
And then when I got a little bit older, I heard, the latest buzz. Do people torment you on that?
It's been a few years. It still creeps up once in a while. Yeah, I think, when did we finish that show? We finished that show like, God, it must have been, I think definitely over 10 years ago. Yeah, like 13 years ago we finished that. So there was definitely, they're like, are you that spiky haired kid from that show?
Well, I'm gonna give you full credit because there are some shows you'll look back and you remember the person from like, if I look at Saved by the Bell or A Boy Meets World, it's like you can go on and do much other things. And believe me, they have. Like Jaleel White continues to act, but everyone keeps calling him Urkel. It's sad, but it is what it is. But I love the fact that when I looked it up, so I kind of got into Hudson and Rex just through quarantine. Gotta love quarantine.
Yeah. And it's a good show to binge. There's a lot of episodes.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So I was there and I was sitting down and I was watching it and I looked at it and I was like, okay, they got a good cast. I don't know if it's intentional, but like you have all these different backgrounds. And I kept on saying to one of my friends, and I think it was like my mom, I tried out on my mom first and told a couple of my friends, just, like testing jokes out. And I was like, man, Tobey Maguire, is that his like brother there? Because that looks like, I was like, that's like Superman to me. And then my mom was like, you mean Clark Kent? And I was like, no. But now I see what you're saying.
That's a huge compliment.
It is.
Hey, I mean, Tobey Maguire alone is a huge compliment. I mean, that's the Spider-Man that I grew up with. So I will take that. Yeah, it's his brother, Joni Maguire. I don't know.
Tony Maguire.
Tony Maguire. There we go.
Like, hey, what are you doing? I'm Tony Maguire.
Yeah, I got a famous brother. What are you going to do?
But yeah, like when I was watching it, and then it never dawned on me until I kind of did a bit of research. I was like, oh, he was on like the latest Buzz. I was like, okay, I got to torment him a little bit about that, but only for research. So I feel like you're safe. You're a bit safe until this gets posted, and then people will go back.
Perfect. Yeah, we did that. I mean, we did that so long ago. That was my first show. That was that was an experience for sure. We had such a great time. I'm still in touch with Monroe. He's still my best friend after all these years. Talked to him yesterday, actually. But yeah, it is nice when it does creep up because, because I haven't seen it in a while and I haven't heard people talk about it in a while. It's when it does come up, it is refreshing. And it's like, oh, that show, like people are still watching that show and enjoying it wherever they can find it. I mean, I don't know at this point if there are reruns or anything like that, but it's just, it's great to hear just because we had a great time shooting it.
Yeah. Like I mentioned, the reason that I brought it up was because I kind of got into media through Radio Free Roscoe. That was my thing. Like, and then when I found out,
I watched that show too. That was, Brent Piaskowski.
And to find out like it was, Canadian content, we actually had like Kate Todd on an episode to talk about it. And I was like, oh, this is kind of cool. But when seeing the latest Buzz, it went from like the radio side to kind of the magazine side.
Yeah.
And you still had one of I can't remember her name now. I feel bad for not remembering, but like she was kind of the voice of Cougar Radio, ended up being kind of the managing director of this magazine. But
Janelle,
and I love when you look back at it, like you have different diversity in that, but different. It's almost like you're catering it to the young crowd at that time because you had the one with the spiky hair, the one that was very fashionably done, the one that was like a skater kid. And I'm like, looking back and like, I tried all three of those genres. None of them worked.
I did too. Like it was, I loved it because I felt like the music was something. I mean, I skateboarded for a while and I gave up on that after a couple of years. And but that was the thing. It's that every character had their own style and fit in this genre of what they were doing, what they were talking about. And I felt lucky enough that I was doing music because I was the kid also that was like always listening to stuff that nobody else was. And so I would think it was the coolest thing. Like my brother and I were listening to like 70s prog music and old Genesis and Jethro Tull and stuff. And I would go to parties. I'd be like, have you guys heard this Jethro Tull record? And they're like, no, we're 14. Like we're 14 years old. What are you talking about?
Yeah, we're listening to like, what's popular on the radio today.
Yeah. And I'm like, who's this Justin Bieber? I mean, have you guys not listened to Emerson, Lake and Palmer? It would just get like more and more obscure.
Justin, to get into, I guess, a little bit of the Hudson and Rex side, how did you essentially get cast in this role? Because, I'm being very polite to you right now, but if someone told me that role was available, we would have to go. And I don't mean fight. I mean, like, I'm sure they'd still pick you. I'm sure they'd still pick you. They'd be like, this guy was on the latest Buzz.
I don't know, man.
Degrassi. What have you done? I'd be like, I'm sorry. I was away getting a communications degree.
You're like, no one knows Newfoundland better than me. I live in Newfoundland.
Oh, yeah. And then see, that's where they'd call you bluff because they're like, okay, take us down to Water Street. Like, what street? What street is that?
So where are you from? Are you in Witless Bay? Did you say? Are you?
Yeah. So I grew up in the Ghouls. When I came back home, my parents decided, hey, let's not tell Bryan we're moving to Witless Bay. Okay, maybe now is a good time to tell Bryan we're moving to Witless Bay. Like I know parts. Actually, it's funny because when you look at like say the Jelly Bean houses downtown, I could get this wrong. My mom will probably correct me after when this episode premieres or whatever. But my uncle or my great uncle actually lives in between those houses. So like a lot of the famous scenery you see, he was like another street or so in between that. But if someone asked me today, what is that street? I'm like, I'm sorry, I'm from here, but I'm glad to be a Newfoundlander, but don't get too personal with me because then you're going to expose me for not being a Newfoundlander.
So I'm a Newfoundlander, okay?
Yeah, that's it. I didn't have to take no tests. I didn't have to. I was born and raised here. What are you doing here?
Yeah. Well, I haven't been out to the Goulds. We film pretty much. We like our studio's in Mount Pearl.
Okay.
And then all of our exterior stuff for the most part is St. John's. But yeah, I mean, to answer your question, it was a pretty quick process. I think they had been looking to cast the character for a while. I had gotten an email about it, and it was like, yeah, we're looking. Do you want to audition for this character, Jesse? And they're like, it's 2 months in St. John's from October to December, and that was sort of it. I did one audition, and then probably about a week later, I found out I got it, and and then in October we were filming in St. John's, and then 8 episodes suddenly turned to 16 episodes, and then 16 turned into another 16, and then another. So it's been a pretty. It all happened really fast, and in the best way possible, because I was able to live out in St. John's, which was on a bucket list. Like I had never been out to Newfoundland at the time, and I had heard so much about it, and I didn't realize I'd be out there to the extent that I was out there, but it was great. It all kind of worked out. So yeah, it was a really quick process, but it was nice. It's nice to work.
There are points in the episodes, like I like how you implement Newfoundland actors in a way, but like not outright like, hey, we have Mary Walsh on. Everyone knows Mary Walsh or an Alan Hocko, but you don't put them as, hey, this is Mary Walsh. She's going to be on the show. It's like you give her a character. The only one that I will ever be a little bit upset about, but I didn't pitch it, so it's not my, like, I can't really be like, oh man, how come they didn't take it? Like, I loved how they used Mary Walsh, because it's like
she was so great in that,
and she can play almost like anything, right?
Yeah,
but
yeah.
I was just like, man, you had Alan Hocko on, and you were like making him like a bad guy, which is cool. I got the song Treble from that, like the closing credits. Shout out to Treble, because they actually came on because I watched that episode. Nice. But I was like, man, how do you not have this as a crossover episode where somehow you guys can't solve this and you bring in Alan Hocko?
Like, I get it. I totally get it. And you know what? I think the one thing that did cross over is his leather jacket. Thankfully, I think Alan Hocko's leather jacket budget for for Doyle and Hudson and Rex. They went hand in hand. But I do get that. I think there is something that's really cool about the idea of extending the universe of Hudson and Rex to Republic of Doyle, and because that's the thing. Like, I mean, I don't remember how long Doyle went, but it was the Newfoundland show for the longest time, right? And it's really cool that we have these. Yeah, I totally see what you're saying. I wish we did that too.
I think I know it's already been used. I think he was in season 3 maybe that I think he was used, but just say if you give it maybe till season 4, season 5, bring them back in, and you can still implement it. It's just that I would have thought instantly when I seen an Alan Hocko crossover, I was like, dude, there's going to be like this thing where he's a badass right now, but at the end of it, they find out that he brings in his team. It's almost like, guys, where have you been all these years kind of thing, but to each their own. But
yeah, you know what? I think I feel like this show has the legs to go on for a long time. And I think if we give it enough time in between, we could bring him back in another, in some sort of other way.
You have to, but I love that comment of like the leather jacket. It's almost like when you go to the meeting, it's like, Alan, we're so glad you're coming in on the show. It's like, here's what we got you to do. And he's like, okay, one thing, my leather jacket. They're like, okay, that's a deal breaker.
Deal. Is that Levi's? Is that Levi's?
Yeah.
Yeah.
He walks out, like, how things are with dealing with agents and stuff. He's like, I love the episode, but I don't have the heart to tell him that they didn't put in my leather jacket. He's like, no problem. He walks back in here. He's like, can you right there where it says wardrobe, leather jacket, there, done.
Yeah, exactly. Just like Alan was really peeved that his leather jacket didn't make it into the episode. We just wanted to get a little bit of clarity on that. And
I don't think
I would have loved to work with him.
I do like, for fans, especially the younger fans that watch it, you get to see kind of Rex's tricks or how things are getting done on the show. Like going through glass, I was like, are you kidding me? This glass,
that was wild. Yeah. We shot one. We did one. Like that's the thing is a big, a big attribute to this show is how like how great the dog is, obviously, but it's a testament to the team, right? That Sherry and her team. We did a stunt close to the end of this season where, I won't give too much away, but it was wild, and it's dog and detective, Superman diving at the same time, and what she's able to put together, and so it's great, and it's great for fans to see, and we really, we could be for a show that centers around a dog. We just lucked out with like the best dog and the best team, ever. So it's not an easy thing to do, and it's, I mean, they say never work with dogs and never work with kids. I don't believe that after doing this. It's pretty amazing. So yeah, I do love that that's a big part of the social media, and that people get to see how it's done and how they work.
Are there times where it's kind of like, I know the trainer's really good with them per se, but are there times where it's like, geez, can you just get through this one scene, please? Or like, can we try something different so it's not as difficult for that dog to do?
Right. Yeah. There's obviously strenuous moments, right? And the thing is too, is that we have to look after the dog's well-being, and that's, that's what Sherry does. So, I mean, there's days where certain stunts might take a little bit longer or things like that, or I mean, as being a Newfoundlander, a big part of what can make our shooting schedule difficult are the elements, right? Or is the weather, right? So if there's something that doesn't work, we might have to reshoot it in the studio and do some problem solving. I will say that when I first joined the show, I remember we filmed a scene where, and I wasn't used to. Because what we'll do is, if we have a master shot with all of us and with Diesel, in order to get Diesel to look where we want him to look, Sherry has to be like talking over the dialogue, and I remember, having never worked with a dog before, kind of being shocked. It was just like, is this, I wasn't used to it, and I'm like, are we like, is this going to be like ADR? What's going to happen? But you get used to that really quickly. And they've also gotten really good at, you do the master, and then Diesel will relax, and then they'll get all the close-ups, and we'll kind of get back into the scene and do our thing and stuff. But we've definitely, for the most part, we've definitely found a really good rhythm with how things are done. And I mean, it only took 48 episodes. No, I'm kidding. No, we found it pretty early on, and yeah, there's going to be tough days, and there's going to be days where things might not work how they were maybe planned or maybe seen on the script or however, but I feel for the most part it works out in the end.
I want to talk a little bit about your favorite parts of the show. Like, of course, playing the character Jesse, you mentioned of course that you're more or less in the studio more than like doing the stunts and things with Diesel or Rex.
Right.
But what's some of the stuff that you kind of enjoy about the show, and like something that drew you to, oh yeah, this is something I want to do?
Well, I mean, I had never played a cop before. I mean, I don't know if you'd call Jesse an actual licensed police officer, but I
call him
never,
a snitch.
Yeah, yeah, exactly. He's a snitch. So that was exciting to me. I'd never been to Newfoundland before. That was exciting to me. Honestly, my favorite parts, I mean, I live for the episodes that Jesse gets out of the studio and gets to do, like that undercover student one was one of my favorites to shoot for sure. And we have some fun ones this season as well. But it was a new territory for me in the sense of, this is a procedural show, and in terms of it was a lot of dialogue for Jesse, to explain what's going on, and that took a little bit of time to kind of get used to. But that's the thing. Honestly, one of my favorite parts are the people that I'm working with, because we work long hours. We do a lot of episodes, and I'm away from home. I usually fly back and forth, back in the olden days before COVID. but this season I lived in Newfoundland for 6 months, and it was sort of, but I couldn't picture doing that with like any other group of people, because we're all, there. We have a blast in the studio, especially the four of us, because there, like, somewhere there's a blooper reel that is just longer than.
I want to see those bloopers.
I want to see it too, and I really think I don't know who to talk to, but I really think we should release some sort of blooper reel. And there's all this B-roll footage of us trying to get Diesel to look at us, which is Sherry will just be like, okay, Justin, just call his name and make a sound, like make a high pitched sound. So he would do like a head cock or something. And so there's somewhere there is hours of footage of us making like high pitched ridiculous noises to try to get Diesel to look at us. So I mean that's sort of grown to be my favorite thing, is just this, the banter that we have, and we get along great, and we've kind of gotten to a part where we also start to establish these character relationships in this show, because a show that is a show that's designed to be a procedural, it's going to be about the case, and it's going to be about these people are here to solve this case. And so once in a while they'll show glimpses of these character backgrounds or what these, but there's also a lot of fun in sort of coming up with that ourselves and creating that ourselves, and it also really it came naturally for the most part, because we just get along really well, except for Johan Reardon. He's
yeah.
It's awful.
It's just a pain. It's just a pain. Yeah.
But yeah, so if that's a long-winded answer for.
No. I like it. I was gonna mention, because like in future episodes when you're coming up with season 4, season 5. Yeah. I mean, I'm gonna put my name in the hat and say, if you ever come up with episodes that are involved in Witless Bay or a podcaster, sure. I mean, I want to call, even if it's like Bryan, what's something that you want to do? I'm like, well, I kind of want to throw Jesse in a river. Yeah. It's like, but he never leaves. He never leaves. Like, I don't care. I will kidnap him and throw him in a river. But what's the whole episode? Oh, there's got to be an episode?
Yeah. Oh. like a podcaster in Witless Bay kidnaps the techie guy.
That's not even a crime. Why are we invested in this? It's like, okay.
It sort of becomes almost like a King of Comedy storyline where you hold me hostage to do this podcast.
Yeah. Great. At any point, did you bring like your a girlfriend, or I guess you're engaged now, but have you brought her with you, or like does she COVID with you, or is it more or less like, this is my time, stay away from me?
No, it was there was a point where I was like, you got to get here, you got to come. She did. She came and isolated for 2 weeks and stayed with me for like a month and a half, and it was that was amazing. We did Trinity and Port Rexton and all that stuff, and I mean it's a long time to be away from family.
Absolutely.
And the fact that was able to happen, and then I came back in December for Christmas, and it just sort of it splits up the time too, which is great.
Does she ever pitch ideas to you of like she wanting to be on the show in some capacity?
I don't think she wants to be on the show at all.
Oh, come on.
It would be great, if she was there, and I could have her, if she was even like a background performer or something like that.
Yeah.
I would love to just see her, walk in the background, and one day I'm gonna start planting seeds and see if I can convince her.
Even if it's just like the sister or cousin that comes to visit so often, because like they're away in university, but like you have a spring break or a Christmas break where it's like, hey, Jesse, it's like your sister's in town, and then it's like, even if it's like a 5-second or 5-minute like thing where she's just in the episode, and then at the end, even if it's like, oh well, they might have went to her house and kidnapped her. Like, you don't have to have her in the scene, but it's like you understand why she was then implemented in the beginning.
Yeah, I'm going to bring this up to her as soon as we finish this podcast.
Yeah.
And I'm like, look, Bryan and I had a conversation.
Yeah. Who is Bryan? Why is he having conversations?
Yeah. You know what? I don't think she would do it. I would love that. But that's the thing. It's if she's ever looking for something to do in Newfoundland while I'm working, we work long hours.
Yeah.
And if it's raining,
of course,
and there's nothing to do, I'd say come to set.
When you were mentioning, of course, about guest stars that you have on, you mentioned about Alan Doyle. Like the one that came to mind, I also see like Melissa Critch sometimes does the news aspect of things. So I think that's interesting because like you're getting them, like people know who they are, but you're putting it in a different platform. I would personally love it if somehow you implemented Mark Critch doing impersonations. Like even if it's like we're looking for Alan Doyle, and it's like that's not Alan Doyle, that's Mark Critch being Alan Doyle. Like an impersonation shop, right? Like you go into a store and like you're looking for, I don't know, like a robber or something, and it's like Mark Critch owns his own like warehouse of, I don't know, funny equipment, and he's like, I can give you an Alan Doyle, and they're like, you can get out of here.
There should be an episode where you're trying to catch one suspect, but every time you think it's this one guy, it's just Mark Critch dressed up as this guy. You're like, we can't get anywhere in this case because Mark Critch keeps showing up dressed up as all these different people. You know what? Listen, man, by season 18, we're gonna be, if we need some ideas.
I will be like Perry Chafe of Republic of Doyle. I'll just be writing stuff down and being like, we're out of ideas. Can you go see Brian? It's like, I think Brian's out of ideas. How many episodes has Brian been in by himself? Like, how many features has Brian had? Yeah, you're right. That's way too many. How is he writing himself into the script, and how is it getting by?
And it's still good.
That's going to do it for this episode of Tobin Tonight. Our thanks to Justin Kelly for coming on to the show. Remember, you can find past, present, and future episodes on TobinTonight.com, Spotify, and iTunes. Follow us on Twitter, like us on Facebook, and leave a comment or two. For Tobin and myself, this is Jacob saying thank you for listening and good night.
This program is brought to you by OHL Action Pack. Looking to see tomorrow's stars today? Follow the team